This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose and welcome to Focus. It is our pleasure today to have as our guest Dr. Martin Cantor. He is the director of the Long Island Center for Socioeconomic Policy. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Rich.
Yeah, and you've just written a report. Tell us, what is this report about? I know it deals with trying to save the taxpayers some money, at least on a local level. Explain what you got in mind.
Well, it's a case for town-wide school districts. I took a look at the money that the 2% tax cap that the governor and legislature enacted this year.
Got a lot of attention. It's going to be the big way to save taxpayers, right?
Well, what it does is it's going to limit the increases to 2% of the budget each year, and the taxpayers can pierce it with 60% of the vote. So what's going to happen now is that school districts have to do more with less. Unless the taxpayers vote to tax themselves.
Which they need like a supermajority, a 60% vote. But there are also some exceptions like construction or some major company leaving, I believe is what I recall.
Yeah, tax-based leaving and things like that, which is not, it's not really going to happen. So the superintendents or the school districts have to do more. And the question that I asked was, if you have a chronic problem of underperformance, which we have, you have even though we do well, we're doing a little lower performance than we used to, and the dollars won't be here. Well, maybe it's time to take a look at the structure of school districts.
You're talking about the academic performance that's maybe slacked off a little bit.
Yeah, we're down about 2%. Yeah, we're down at 2% in English. Math increased at a very slow about 2%, but 52% of the kids met the region standards. I mean, what happens to the other 48?
Some people would say 48 is pretty high for them not to meet the standard.
Oh, it is.
But that's the second topic. The first topic that you're saying is, you have to do more with less. And then this has been talked about overall as a consolidation thing and talking about losing local control and having people share. How does this address that issue? Where would this control go to? What would happen to the administrators of local school districts? Would people still be going to their same school by what you're proposing? Explain it to me.
Well, yes. Well, what I took a look at was I did a study, and I found that in high schools that have 80% graduation rates and those that have 90% graduation rates, which meet the No Child Left Behind standard, there's no impact on the school board. The school board's financial practices, legal practices, governance practices, they're the same. They don't impact student achievement. So I asked myself the question, well, why do we need them? Why do we need a school board at the local level? At every 3 schools, you need a school board. Why? And then I started to take a look at if we got rid of the local school boards and we created a town-wide school district, then we don't need all those intermediary superintendents and assistant superintendents. And by taking a look at the 5 western towns of Suffolk, which had a $4.9 billion budget, there was a savings of $35 million just by getting rid of litigation, consolidating litigation, creating a school board, eliminating the deputy superintendents for curriculum and instruction, and PR people and school board costs. And what that left was the principals to be in charge of the academic performance and the budget.
Did you say that the 5
western towns of
Suffolk have a nearly $5 billion, $5 billion?
$5 billion.
$5 billion just for the schools? Just for the
school, for 47 schools, for operating 47 schools. Long Island has an entire school budget of over $10 billion, about $10.4 billion. So that's a lot of money.
That's over $100 million per school.
Yeah.
Average it out that way. That just seems like an enormous amount of money just for the school system.
Oh yeah, in the town of Brookhaven, they spend $1.1 billion on their school budget. It's a lot. It's an awful lot of money. So rather than everybody complaining that we don't have enough money or we have too many mandates, there's no discussion for let's restructure how we deliver education and stop impacting the classroom. Because clearly, if you want better academic performance, the classrooms have to be enhanced.
Well, there's so many questions there because that's such a mind-boggling amount of money, first of all, for a school system. And if you compare it across school systems across the country, there's an enormous differences. There are very few other places that are going to have those kind of costs. California probably,
sure.
Perhaps Washington, D.C.
Massachusetts, some of the big
Massachusetts. but really there's only a handful. So, you know, you said by doing this you'd save $35 million out of almost $5 billion. That almost seems like a pittance, though.
Well, what it comes up to is 0.7%, 7 tenths of 1%.
It's not even 1%.
Well, when you consider that the governor imposed a 2% cap, this is 35% of the cap. So when you take a look at where do I come up with the extra money that the governor is capping the school budget increases with, well, we get almost half of it would be if you just restructure the school districts.
Well, that just shows you, I mean, it's significant in comparison to the goal of keeping it within 2%. And so that's a big chunk of money that you could at least get the school systems headed in that direction. But from doing this study, there must have been more you were thinking.
Well, we create local control. We don't eliminate that. Each principal, each school would have a community board that would support the principal and give input. There would be the lines of the present school districts would not be eliminated, but when you have elections for the townwide school board, these areas would elect their own representatives. So you would have more local control. More control over your dollars, more control over the academic performance, because right now there's no accountability. When you get scores that come in and say, well, only 64% of the graduating class, scored well in English, well, the question is, well, who's at fault? Is it the superintendent of the district, the deputies? Everybody says the teachers, but
the parents. Some people would say. The family.
Well, family, parents, and Edward Demings, the total quality management guru, who wrote the book on total quality management, would say it's not the workers, it's the management. And so if you take a look at how our schools are managed, do we have a layer of management we just don't need anymore? And I argue in my white paper that we do. And
so you're convinced of that? Because, you know, you've been around a long time on Long Island, Marty, right? And you know people, you've been involved in the crossroads of the economy and politics, and you know many of these administrators.
Well,
and you see them and you meet them at meetings. We cover these meetings all the time. They're all good, well-meaning, well-educated people with lots of credentials, yet you're saying some of these people aren't needed?
Well, what I'm saying is, what does a school superintendent add to the education of a child in a classroom? He doesn't teach the class, he administers the budget. What does a curriculum deputy superintendent do? The standards, the curriculum standards are mandated by New York State. So there's no individual curriculum.
Did you do any kind of a study to show how the salaries of administrators have gone up over, say, the last 10 or 20 years or 30 years?
Well, it's interesting. I took a look at the part of it was the salaries of the superintendents, and very few of them were above $200,000.
When?
Now. Currently now.
Right. So that's a bit of a myth that every superintendent's making more than $200,000.
Yeah, but the papers and the media points at certain ones that are huge. Roslyn, $500,000.
And they'll be well above 200, the ones they point to.
Oh yeah, well above it.
Point to,
yeah, and when you look at the deputies, they're making $150,000. There's not abusive salaries there, but when you add them all up, you get a big chunk of money. Of $35 million, and that would be the extra. When you consider that each school district today, when the governor cut the budget, they had to cut $1 to $2 million out of their budgets, and they were complaining. So here we are finding $1 to $2 million, per existing district. So it's not really a pittance. It's what everybody's been complaining they're losing. But by creating townwide school districts, we've manufactured the money.
Well, are these salaries justified? Some of these administrators saying that the governor just jealous of what they make, pointing out that some of them make more than him, and he had a problem with that back when he was first addressing this topic and proposing the 2% tax cap. Are they paid too much? We'll take that up with Dr. Cantor when we return right after this.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And we're back with Dr. Martin Cantor. He's with the Long Island Center for Socioeconomic Policy. What does the Long Island Center for Socioeconomic Policy do?
Well, it's a think tank that I established to look at the issues that are confronting Long Island, and we take a hard look at it. We make no bones about the problems that we have and the oxes we have to gore and the changes we have to make. Change is painful. Everybody complains we're overtaxed, and on the region we don't get enough from our tax dollars, and they could be right, but costs go up. So we take a look at all those issues. Energy we're going to be looking at next. school districts and education. I took a look at, one thing we looked at was the impact of poverty on workforce and the future of Long Island. And with this new census data which came out and said that poverty has increased. From 1990 to 2010, the poverty level in Nassau County went up 48%. And so we're taking, and that's the workforce.
So when you see these kind of economic issues, you understand why people are saying, hey, we have to spread the pain around people in the education world who once thought they were safe and spent a lot of time investing in their education so that they could get a doctorate or so that they could have a job as an administrator, what they thought was a good career. Now their whole livelihoods are threatened. Is it fair what's happening to them?
Well, it's not fair. But it's not fair what's happening in the overall economy, and it's not fair that the global economy has impacted so many of Long Island workers. We're in a period of very dramatic and traumatic change in terms of our social fabric. We have more immigrants coming in. We're a country of immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. So you know, we have a changing workforce, changing dynamic, changing needs on the federal level, a big deficit. Increasing debt, so that can only be changed if we make some dramatic changes.
So are they overpaid, or is it we just can't afford them?
No, they're not overpaid. I don't. The folks.
So then we can't afford them.
The folks in the study that I looked at, they're not overpaid, in my opinion. However, we might not be able to afford them for what they do in terms of the results that we expect from the educational profession on the island. And
for what they do, are they worth? Are we getting a bang for our buck? I mean, when I hear numbers like 52% is in a, you know, what is a success rate for some of these tests and some of these achievement levels that we've set, well, that means nearly as many failed though, or didn't reach that standard. So, you know, 52, 40. If you got that, if you took a test and you got a 52, you'd be considered a dunce by many people.
Well, you know, that's the question I'm asking. You know, the report that I had done identified problems. And also came up with a potential solution in terms of dollars. It's got to be explored further, but it needs to be explored. And what we have is that the people who are justifying the status quo are the ones that this report says we might not need anymore if we go to a townwide school district.
Is there any political consensus for this happening? Because everyone talks about how the schools waste money and they spend too much money and it costs too much and my property taxes are too high. But as soon as anyone proposes a concrete way to change that, like consolidating some of the school boards so that it's town-wide instead of every local hamlet, then people put their foot down and say absolutely no way, because they seem to be afraid of who their kids are going to wind up going to school with, right?
Well, right, but the concept that I developed, and certainly it's not solely to me, other people have talked about it, I just put a dollar sign on it. The local schools aren't going to go away. The children are still going to go to the same schools. The parents are still going to have the same access to the principal.
So anything changes, there's less administrators? That's it?
That's it. It's less administrators. And we create, on the town level, the deputies for instruction and curriculum and the business superintendents. Every school district has a superintendent for business. So why do you need that?
Does this put the town in charge of the schools?
No, it does not.
So who's in charge of the school?
A town-wide school district.
So they have their own school district, but it's town-wide. It becomes sort of a new structure that's right. Melded from all the old?
That's correct. All we do is we eliminate all the duplicative levels at the local level and create a town-wide board of education. It'll be larger. In the town of Babylon, you would have probably 10 members of the board. In the town of Brookhaven, you'd have more members because there are more schools.
But you would need, I mean, how would you even enact such a thing? I mean, it's a great little idea, but somebody's got to sponsor. How would this become law? Somebody would have to take up this campaign and persuade who? Would it need voter approval, legislative approval?
Well, the state legislature would have to become involved, and certainly the voters at the local level would have to approve a referendum to do this.
So it'd be a town-wide referendum, or would every jurisdiction be taking a referendum?
Well, it'd be a town-wide.
So that's a whole lot of levels you'd have to get through, not to shoot down your idea, Marty, but those are the kind of reasons why ideas like this never seem to go anywhere, though.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, this is there's a way to go from here to there. You know, and if people are really serious about paying too much in taxes, then here's a rationale for them to do it. And the object you get is Do you want to pay less taxes? Well, then start exploring something else. The Elwood School.
Well, people say they do want to pay less taxes, and right now what's happening is we're getting layoffs and programs being cut, and teachers claiming that they have to buy their own supplies. Do teachers actually buy their own supplies?
I will tell you, my wife is a teacher, and my daughter's a teacher.
That doesn't seem right.
They spend a lot of money on books. Now, I will give a plug for Staples. Staples has in September back to school, and
you just did, yeah.
Yeah, and they did, and my wife goes in there and she gets all her supplies at such a reduced amount of money, and
still, you would expect that to just be provided by school.
Yeah, there's no supplies. So so notebooks, the composite notebooks, pens, pencils, clips, she buys it and gives it to her kids to make sure they have it.
So then do taxpayers have a right to complain about the services they're receiving when they don't want their taxes to rise and they're not willing to pay for this?
I think that taxpayers have no right to complain about their taxes if they don't put their foot down to change the status quo. If they don't rise up and say, we want to change, we want better educational results. We have kids in poverty that need a little extra help because poverty is an impediment to graduating high school. We have English as second language kids coming in, which we have to educate. They're an investment in our future workforce. Well, taxpayers have to say, if I don't want to pay for it, then stop complaining and do something about it. If you're not going to do something about it and you're not going to push to get referendums, then stop complaining.
Right. Exactly. Well, we wouldn't have anything to talk about on Focus then, Marty.
Well, that's the truth. So we hope they keep complaining.
Right. And of course, you mean that jokingly.
Yes, of course.
And we'll be back with Dr. Cantor to talk about what really goes into all the expenses that a school spends money on when we come back.
TV 10 and 55 Focus continues.
And we're back with Dr. Cantor, and a lot of taxpayers think that the state doesn't contribute anything to the school bill, but that's not true. What does the state contribute to the school bill? Well, as far as, from the general fund, which comes from, people who pay income tax. Maybe they don't own properties, but they also are helping to subsidize the school system. It's not just people who own property that are helping to pay for the school system.
Well, it's the lotto players too.
But also general fund, which comes from income tax that people pay. So really everybody pays for the schools, not just people who own homes.
That's correct. New York City gets 33% of its budget from the state. Nassau County about 13%, Suffolk about 25%.
Why would we get less? You mean these numbers are wildly different? Is upstate getting more?
Upstate, certain school districts get 50, 60, and 70%.
So what kind of a formula is that?
It's based on income and property wealth, and there's an equalization rate which gets calculated in Albany, and that rate is based upon the wealth of the communities. Because we have so many households that have two wage earners in it, people think that we're wealthy. So because of that, and because of the income that we earn on Long Island, like we contribute 17% of the state income tax, and we only get 12% of the state funding for education.
Yeah, because that would be the argument. People in the other parts of the state, well, we don't want to pay your exorbitant costs and give you the same ratio because we keep our costs down. We shouldn't be penalized to subsidize you because you don't have any control over your costs. But what they're overlooking is the fact that because the incomes are higher here, more money is getting sent to Albany in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. We send out to Albany close to $4 billion a year more than we get back in jobs, aid, and so forth. So we are
the Big Apple in the suburbs. We're supposed to have all the clout. How does that happen?
Well, we have the clout in the state Senate, and we just got it back. We got absolutely destroyed when the state Senate was Democrat because it was city-centric, and all the programs went for New York City. We wouldn't have an MTA payroll tax if Brian Foley hadn't voted for it, and he voted with the Democratic majority.
Well, and he paid for that.
And he paid for it. He's now Assistant Parks Commissioner someplace.
Okay, but it shows you though that this whole thing with the schools, which weren't supposed to be political, are political.
Oh, it's very political. The funding is very political. It's where you stand is where you sit.
And some districts seem to do, wealthier districts somehow, they're able to escape the hard times that other schools, they take the brunt of it. We see these big cuts that go into these low-income districts. But that doesn't seem to be absorbed the same way in some of the wealthier districts. So it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum you're on, you have a complaint. The people who are paying all the property taxes in these high income areas are upset, and the people in the low-income areas are upset because they catch the brunt of these cuts because they have a smaller base to begin with to draw from.
Well, that's correct, and a townwide school district would help eliminate that, would create some sort of equalization. But you're right, high-need, low-wealth districts, which get a lot of state aid, more state aid than low-need, high-wealth districts.
Right, because they don't need it, because so they weren't getting it in the first place, so the cuts don't affect them as much as, say, at a low income.
And a high-wealth district will vote for, used to be able to vote for higher taxes and higher spending, but now they won't be able to. So the question is, how will they fund programs that they want? They'll have to make decisions as well.
Well, this almost sounds like the whole scene in Washington, where you have a system that's broken. There are so many formulas that have been mixed up and thrown together over the decades that it's just a mess.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That's why I wrote this white paper. The system is broken, and how we finance education is broken. We took a look, and if teachers became state employees, we would get a 50% tax cut down.
But they don't want to do that.
Well, the teachers would.
The teachers want to be state employees?
Of course, because the pensions, the health care.
But they're attacking those.
They would have, the tenure would be transferable throughout the region. Right now, if a teacher moves from one district to the other, they lose their tenure. Okay. So the teachers would benefit. But the question is that the state would have to bear more of a responsibility, which quite frankly is the state's responsibility. The state courts have said that New York State has to, and the state constitution says that you have to provide an adequate education for all children in the state. And the question is, the debate is what's adequate or not.
Now, you said nearly $5 billion is spent in 47 schools in the western end of schools. Where is all that money being spent? That is an enormous, that is way far above the entire state budget in the state of Maine. Granted, only 1 million people there, but it's almost 3 times as high as the state of Maine's budget. That's a state versus a school district. A state has many responsibilities a school district doesn't. How is it that a school district, that's twice the population of that state, can have 3 times the budget, though?
Well, it's very interesting. If you look at all the budgets, the budgets of the 47 schools, excuse me, that I looked at, everyone has a superintendent, like I said. Everyone has a business manager. Everyone has a budget for the board.
But that doesn't add up to $5 billion.
No,
where does all that money go?
Everyone has maintenance departments. Everyone has vehicles which they use. Everyone has pension costs and health care costs, and pension costs went up. The state controller said that pensions now have to be, I believe he said 18% of salaries.
Which seem archaic now because virtually no one gets a pension anymore.
Well, at least not to the extent that's fully paid by the taxpayers. That's correct. And when you consider that salaries are about 65% of the $5 billion that we're talking about, so it's about $3.5 billion, and you're asking 20% of that to go to the pension. That's a lot of money, and that's where that goes. And then you've got the overhead and the maintenance.
So people are saying that some analysts that I've seen have said it's a generational transfer of wealth, with the younger and the middle income supporting the older generation that benefited from good times and was able to make these great deals and now expects their payoff, but it all has to be paid for by their kids and grandkids.
Well, we've always had that. Social Security was based on generational transfer of wealth. That was when Social Security was enacted, it was the biggest anti-poverty program for seniors. Seniors were living in poverty until Social Security was enacted. So that was the covenant between the employed versus the seniors.
All right. Well, I can't think of any more questions to badger you about on that one. But we have just about a minute. Do you have any legislator anywhere that's interested in sponsoring what you've put out, or have they not had a chance to absorb it yet?
Well, it's on my website, www.martincantor.com, to look at it. We have state assemblymen who are very interested, and they're going to carry it to Albany to talk to the colleagues. Anybody who's a tax advocate who wants to see an interesting way to reduce taxes and expenses should take a look at it. And it's really everybody's issue on Long Island, just not mine.
All right, townwide school districts being proposed by Dr. Martin Cantor of the Long Island Center for Socioeconomic Policy. We'll see where it goes. Thank you for joining us, Dr.
Great
Cantor.
to be here, Rich.
And thank you for being there. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to join us next week for yet another edition of Focus.